that one philosopher should profess to have proved some metaphysical tenet, and that another philosopher should profess to have refuted it, might leave the reader cold. It is not in those regions that he ordinarily feels sure of the truth. Are there no truths obviously necessary to common sense? If I have mislaid my keys, mustn't they be somewhere? If a child is born, mustn't he have had a father? Must is a curious word, pregnant for the satirist. It seems to redouble the certainty of a fact, while really admitting that the fact is only conjectured. The necessity asserted foolishly parades the helplessness of the mind to imagine anything different. Yet this helplessness on which dogmatism rests is shameful, and is secretly felt to be shameful. Spirit was born precisely to escape such limitations, to see the contingency and finitude of every fact, and to imagine as many alternatives and extensions as possible, some of which may be true and may put that casual fact in its true setting. Truth is groped after, not imposed by the presumptions of the intellect, and if these presumptions often are true, the reason is that they are based upon and adjusted to the actual order of nature, which is thoroughly unnecessary, most miraculous when most regular. This blessed regularity, logically unforeseeable, is indeed the basis of human safety, wisdom, and science. It teaches us what must happen under particular circumstances. But accommodation to the truth in these regions leaves the mind, when not mechanized, full of wonder at the truth. The mechanized mind, that cannot wonder at the commonplace, is apt to carry its mechanical presumptions over into logic, as if necessity there too were simply truth to fact. A large part of the confidence felt in numerical and geometrical measurements is an emotional confidence. It comes from a sense of what would surely happen to bodies having those numerical or geometrical properties. We seldom stop to consider narrowly the logical relations between defined essences, as pure mathematics would require us to do, but we rely on common knowledge of the world become in ourselves an irresistible mode of imagination, and this precipitation of ideas in ourselves we call necessity in the object. Anything else would be impossible, that is to say, impossible for us to believe. Interest in fact, or confident judgment about fact, here overcomes or confuses interest in essence. Yet, wonder at the commonplace, at the stars, or a flower, or a word, comes to almost everybody at certain moments, because these things are too improbable in themselves and too inexplicably juxtaposed for a spirit whose natural field is the perspicuous. A rationalistic reader might still ask, is there no truth within your realm of essence? Are not unity and distinctness present in all essences? And is it not true to say so? And all that you yourself have written here and elsewhere about essence, is it not true? No, I reply, it is not true, nor meant to be true. It is a grammatical or possibly a poetical construction having, like mathematics or theology, a certain internal vitality and interest. But in the direction of truth-finding, such constructions are merely instrumental, like any language or any telescope. A man may fall into an error in grammar or in calculation. This is a fault in the practice of his art, at bottom a moral defect, a defect in attention, diligence, and capacity. And in my dialectic I have doubtless often clouded my terms with useless or disturbing illusions. But when consistently and conscientiously worked out and stripped to their fighting weight, my propositions will be logically necessary, being deducible from the definitions or intuitions of the chosen terms, and especially of this chosen term essence itself. But logic is only logic, and the systems of relation discoverable amongst essences do not constitute truths, but only other more comprehensive essences, within which the related essences figure as parts. The systems, like the logical elements, become a means of expressing truth only when truth can be otherwise discovered and brought face to face with our deductive reasonings. Truth will then domesticate our logic in the world until perhaps the dialectical guest so hospitably received forgets his essential foreignness and undertakes to drive the poor native facts out of house and home. Our idealisms, in their moral autonomy, can hardly abstain from claiming a divine right to govern the world, to correct it, or at least to scold it for being so unaccountably wrong. And far from right, the world indeed is, and must be, judged by human interests and even by human logic, because man and his moral aspirations are only incidents in the universe. But there is one ideal measure that the actual world cannot fall short of. It cannot be far from true. This truth, if the world had been chaotic, might have excluded the existence of mind altogether, or kept mind down to the sensuous level, but there was a partial rationality or promise of rationality in things that encouraged the mind to clarify its ideas and to develop logic. Logic is a child of fact, as spirit in general is a child of the psyche. A headstrong child quick to forget or deny the sweet milk that has nurtured it, yet the bond with earth remains notwithstanding. It remains not only in the past, fundamentally determining the choice of essences that logic shall play with, but it remains also contemporaneously, in that even the logician's thoughts are controlled at every turn by physical accidents and social pressure. It is important to distinguish this nether contact of logic with fact in the biological genetic direction from the ideal contact established or rather claimed when logic is used to express or to extend natural knowledge. Biological contact exists also between vital facts and music. It exists between vital facts and illusions, errors, or myths, but music luckily is not expected until it is coined into language to convey knowledge of facts. That is the secret of its magnificent development. The life of music is free from everything except the biological impulses and multiple harmonies internal to the organism. Sight and touch, on the contrary, though no less sensuous, animal, and subjective than sound, are more readily and completely caught up by the cognitive impulse and idolatrously treated as true. Exactly how literally or consistently it would be endless to trace. By the truth, as the reader knows, I understand the complete ideal description of existence, and any part of this description will be a truth, that is, a part of the truth. The ideal complete description of an essence, on the contrary, or of the relations between essences, unless this description is rehearsed psychologically by some living mind, is simply that very essence and those very relations. It can be neither false nor true, but only articulate. And the realm of essence being infinite and omnimodal, any other description of any other essence, or relations between essences, would be equally articulate up to its own degree of elaboration, so that there would be nothing to choose in the way of truth between any two descriptions. This insight removes a problem sometimes needlessly proposed about the choice of definitions. For instance, in the case of number or numbers, mathematicians are unanimous and clear on the point that 2 plus 2 equals 4, but they are obscure and divided as to the nature of 2 and of 1, of plus and of equals. And we are allowed to infer that there is a true nature of equals and plus, of 1 and of 2, but that, in logic, is nonsense. Each of these essences is whatever it is by any definition. The rest is merely a question of names, perhaps preempted by custom to some one definition rather than to another. Essentially, all conceivable natures and definitions are on par. The only question is historical and psychological, regarding the prevalence of particular notions in the human mind, or else psychical, as to the applicability of these notions to the cosmos. In both directions, obscurity is inevitable, and differences of opinion, if modest, are legitimate. It may be expedient to limit the interpretation of mathematical science to particular humanly chosen ideas, but other interpretations, perhaps less fertile or useful, would not be essentially less cogent. Truth then never enters the field of mathematics at all, and there is no true view about the nature of number or numbers until the discussion veers from mathematics altogether to physics, history, or psychology. From this it follows that we may intelligently adopt and apply the category of truth to current perceptions and opinions, inasmuch as they profess to be knowledge and are asserted of positive facts. But when in reflection we make some supposition deliberately contrary to fact, the relevance of truth to that supposition is exhausted before we begin to develop it. The supposition is admittedly false, and in considering it further, we are exploring the relations it may have in the realm of essence only, where questions of truth do not arise. Romantic people think of what might have been, some danger narrowly escaped, some bet almost won, possibilities near enough to the truth to seem false, and perhaps bitter. In this moodiness we may say that the poets lie, but the poets did not lie. They were inspired. Their suppositions were contrary to fact only by accident, and quite apart from their innocent intention. No doubt common waking perception is truer than poetry, and the poets in their same moments will not deny it, but inspiration liberates them from that interest. The crucial point is this, that not only are all particular truths and facts contingent, but the very categories of fact and truth, like all other essences, if they are exemplified at all, are exemplified unnecessarily and by a groundless chance. Logic, when once its foothold in fact has been secured at any point, has a moral part to play, and this in two directions. It humanizes the world, since we now can think and reason about it with some relevance, and it vivifies speculation by allying the furthest reaches of it with real life. Logic traces the radiation of truth. I mean that when one term of a logical system is known to describe a fact, the whole system attachable to that term becomes, as it were, incandescent and forms a part of the aura of truth. The terms of logic are themselves originally glimpses of facts. We deepen this apprehension humanly and morally when we develop ideally the qualities which a fact truly wears either in itself or in relation to human faculties and interests. As a poet deepens his sense of beauty, if one beauty in his mind recalls another, and he finds metaphors and musical words that may re-echo his passion. But we may also deepen our apprehension by buttressing it with apprehensions of kindred or neighboring facts, which, though interlopers in that argument, support it by analogy or qualify its value. Here is where allusions, logically redundant, may help to brighten the faint rays of truth still coloring high speculation between the branchings of our logic that spread aloft forgetful of the truth in which, after all, they are remotely rooted. We may catch fresh glimpses of earth and sky, and so gain, as we go, circumstantial support or correction for our deductions. Thus grammar, rhetoric, and logic enrich enormously the phenomenon of being alive. They embroider every image with 1,000 latent analogies and concordant rhymes, and they enshrine this image in the ideal world to which, after all, every image belongs, because the truth or applicability of ideas, as of words, though it may be the chief or only source of their importance, is irrelevant to their sensuous or intrinsic character, so that when an idea, weighted with the dignity of truth, is lifted out again from the alien context and accidental occasion, which ally it with fact, the idea seems to be clarified and to sing hallelujah, for it finds itself free at last to be itself, and to trace its internal affinities in its native element. nor is this merely essential or logical holiday for the mind. It is a holiday or holy day also in a religious sense, because weighted with truth as the idea now is, it drags, as it were, the whole workaday world with it into light. The world which was but a too familiar fact suddenly becomes beautiful, and at the same time the idea, only a graphic pattern before, now touches the heart and becomes poetical. Finally, turning the doctrine here defended against itself, we might ask whether it is not necessarily true that the truth is contingent and not necessary. Here again I must repeat that what is necessary logically is not necessarily true. In this case, that truth is contingent is a necessary proposition, because facts, by definition, make the truth true, and all facts, again by definition, are contingent. But there is no necessity in the choice or in the applicability of such categories as necessity, truth, or fact. These categories are not necessarily true. I find that, as a matter of fact, they are true, or at least true enough. They articulate human thought in a normal way, which reality on the whole seems to sanction. They are the lungs and heart valves of the mind, and while we use these categories, we shall be obliged on pain of talking nonsense to stick to their connotations, and to acknowledge, among other things, that there are no necessary truths. But the possession of such categories is after all a psychological or even a personal accident, and the fact that they are convenient or even absolutely true in describing the existing world is a cosmic accident. The thesis of the first chapter, then, that there are no necessary truths, is itself made necessary only by virtue of certain assumed intuitions or definitions which fix the meaning of the terms necessity, contingency, existence, and truth. But no definition and no intuition can render true the term that it distinguishes. My thesis will therefore be a true thesis only insofar as in the realm of existence facts may justify my definitions and may hang together in the way that those definitions require. The case is the same in principle as in the homely equation 2 plus 2 equals 4, only that in arithmetic the terms are simpler and more familiar, so that the necessary relation between them is obvious to more people. It happens at the same time that the application of arithmetic, where it applies, is most constant and exact, so that its truth in those regions is beyond doubt, whereas any general logic applied to describing the universe, however ancient and well tried this logic may be, remains rather a form of human grammar. We are in a region of free intuition and construction, as in music, with no claims to propounding a revealed or a revealing truth.